Hi, I'm Femi. Okay, the Philippines elections are next May. But this week in the Philippines, there's a lot of buzz around the elections because candidates have to declare if they're running by October the 8th. So today on the stream, we're asking who could replace President Rodrigo Duterte? I know you have thoughts, opinions, questions for our panel. Comment section of YouTube is right here. Put your comment into YouTube and I will do my best to wrap it into today's show.
I'm Ken Abante, a COVID-19 response volunteer in the Philippines, now considered in many rankings to be one of the worst places to be in the COVID-19 pandemic. And make no mistake about it, it's because of terrible governance that we got here. My family members here who are rural healthcare workers are not getting the protection that they deserve from this government. And that's why I think passing a real pandemic response budget is the most important election issue in 2022. Our lives and our loved ones' lives are on the ballot. This is such an important election.
Because it's such an important election, we have the ATeam here for you. We have Liam, Jose, Lisandro. I am going to ask them to greet you and tell you who they are, what they do. Lian, good to have you. Please introduce yourself to the stream audience.
Hi, Femi. Good morning from Manila. I am Lian Juan, a journalist with Rappler, and I host our legal podcast, Law of Duterte Land.
Good to have you. Jose, welcome back to the stream. Please remind our audience who you are, what you do.
Hi, I'm Jose Ramon Albert. I'm a policy think tank researcher and statistician. I work for the government think tank.
Good to have you. And Lisandro, welcome to the stream. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, Femi. I'm Lisandro Claudio. I'm an academic. I'm assistant professor at the Department of South and Southeast Asian Studies at UC Berkeley.
All right, so I was going to say candidates, but guests. First of all, how would you describe this current collection of wannabe presidential candidates? Lisandro, you start. You can use one word or one sentence, your choice.
Heirs of dictators, the top two at least.
Ooh, okay. Jose, follow that.
Children, because you have the son of Ferdinand Marcos, and then the son of somebody, an adopted son of sorts of a celebrity who is a mayor of Manila.
Yeah.
Also, so many children and a mother.
Oh my goodness. Lian, wrap up your thoughts about what this collection of presidential candidates look like so far.
Well, for a fact, it's still incomplete because we are on a dramatic tail end of the filing of candidacy and everyone is waiting if the daughter of President Duterte will run for president, Mayor Sara Duterte.
So there's one more day to go in the Philippines. If you wanted to declare yourself to be president, you have one more day to do that. But tell us about this process this week. It's 8 days, 7 days when you have to declare. Lian, can you talk us through that a little bit?
It has been certainly a very dramatic last 7 days for the Philippines. Well, the first candidates to declare themselves, Senator Manny Pacquiao, for example, and the mayor of the capital, Mayor Isko Moreno, have already declared. But the dramatic moments came when the son of the dictator, Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos, declared his bid for the presidency. And then 2 days later, his arch-rival, the Vice President and leader of opposition, Leni Robredo, also declared. So it's been kind of a tense 1 week for the whole Filipino nation, and everyone is waiting for Mayor Sara.
Jose, I see you nodding. Articulate your nod.
Yeah, well, as I was saying, because it seems like there are a lot of children who are trying to become president, because they're trying to sort of protect the legacies of their parents, and each of them are trying to project themselves as somebody credible enough. And we don't know whether we're, it's been a rather exciting set of days.
I feel the excitement just coming off the screen watching you. Abdul Hafiz Al-Sutachio is on Twitter right now. Let me share this with you, Lisandro. I am an absentee voter. As part Filipino, this election will be the most controversial since 2016. I will make sure that my vote will be counted. Lisandro, thoughts?
Yeah, yes, I'm a first-time absentee voter as well. I just moved to the United States last year, And I think that this election is the most important election we've had in at least 20 years, because it is effectively a referendum on mass murder, because that is the policy of the Duterte administration. It's murdered all sorts of people in its brutal war against drugs. And so if a Duterte is elected, in other words, if Sara Duterte is elected, it's the Philippine people effectively saying that they don't mind a legacy of mass murder. And if they elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr., it's also the Filipino people saying they don't mind a legacy of human rights violations and theft and corruption. So part of this election is really about the future of liberal democracy in the Philippines. It's also about the future of my profession as a historian of the Philippines, because the Marcos campaign is essentially an attempt to whitewash history.
So this...
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Jose. You go first.
Yeah. I was just going to say, but I think most Filipinos actually don't even think along the lines of human rights. They really think about three things: presyo, trabaho, kita, which means presyo is prices, trabaho is jobs, kita is income. So for them, I think human rights, killings, I mean, they don't matter as much. Maybe it matters to some people, but not to a lot of people, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think, and I think precisely that's the problem. If they don't think that human rights are a game changer, then there's something wrong with democracy in the Philippines.
So this, Leanne, this week, this excitement that's happening in the Philippines right now over politics, it's not just from the politicians, it's also from the voters who are registering. Can you talk to me about registration and how the registration has been extended?
Right. From where we see it, there have been long lines in malls. The Commission on Elections has had to open satellite sites in malls just to accommodate the long lines of voters who want to vote. And I can see a lot of first-time voters. They have not just turned 18, but it will be their first time to vote, because for them, we have just gone through the so-called dark ages. So, we have been ranked as one of the worst countries to be in the pandemic. So people are really voting for their lives, as Ken said a while ago in your intro.
You've got a personal... Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it should be emphasized that within ASEAN, we're the worst hit country, and yet our pandemic response on a per GDP on a per capita level, I think, has been one of the lowest. So there's a criminal lack of spending. Even amidst high credit ratings, the government refuses to spend as much as it should on COVID relief.
Leanne, I just wanted you to share that personal story of you lining up to register to vote. Would you mind? Go ahead.
Yeah, right. So I didn't have to line up to register to vote, but I wanted to transfer my voter records because I hail from a province and I wanted to transfer here in the capital. So I did experience the long lines. I have had to go back for 3 days before I can successfully transfer my voting records. And that's one of a more comfortable scenario, because I know people who would line up for hours just to register to vote. But I can, the sense of willingness to participate in the civic exercise is very palpable when you go out, especially with the Delta variant.
So Michael Henry Yuzinko spoke to us here on the stream just a few hours ago, and he talked about that importance of voter registration and how important the voters are in this upcoming election. Have a listen, have a look.
The Philippines has a very young electorate. High voter registration can mean that more young Filipinos will be showing up in the polls. This is precisely the reason why extending the registration period is very significant. A high voter turnout in the 2022 elections can usher in exciting changes to Philippine democracy.
So you have been mentioning various different candidates. I wanted to take a look at 6 of the candidates' guests. I'm going to get you to do a line each for each of the candidates. On YouTube, for instance, Efren says, BBM will be our next president. Aha, Efren, I have no idea if you're right or not, but we are going to get our guests to take us through one by one these candidates, and just a single line to help us understand who's who. Leanne, you start. Sara Duterte.
It's hard to describe her in one line, but continuation of the Duterte government.
Ferdinand Marcos. You also do Ferdinand. Leanne.
son of dictator, the continuation of the dictatorship.
Jose, it's your turn now. Leni Robredo.
The antithesis of Duterte, the figure of the opposition.
This person needs no introduction. I've given you the easier one. Manny Pacquiao.
The most successful Filipino athlete. sorry, Jose. I'm sorry.
Yeah, everybody knows Manny Pacquiao, the boxing legend. And of course, he's a senator of the Philippines.
Yeah, he's been a senator since, I believe, 2016, correct?
Right.
All right. Lisandro, I know you couldn't wait to get started. You've got Isko Moreno. Go ahead.
The mayor of Manila with a reputation for efficiency.
And Panfilo Lacson. That's yours as well, Lisandro.
A former cop branding himself as Duterte Light.
So these are the main contenders. Lisandro, do you feel that we may still see some surprises?
The biggest surprise we're looking at is, as Lian said, Sara Duterte, whether or not she is actually going to run for president. Because as of now, she's actually filed her candidacy to run again for mayor of Davao. So that can still change. I think, Lian, correct me if I'm wrong, she can still change that until early November. But we're not sure what Sara is going to do. Yeah, mid-November, right? I think her father wants her to run alongside his aide and cordon sanitaire, Bongbong, who would be the vice president. But this is not something that the Sara Duterte camp seems to be very open to.
Jose, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it seems, publicly at least that's what she says. But whether or not that's true, it's another thing altogether. So everybody's, just guessing whether or not she's actually going to run and change all of a sudden. She did suggest that she's just going to have a campaign for re-election as mayor of Davao. But we don't know. It's anybody's ball game.
Yeah, that's the continuation of drama started by her father also in 2015, because it's a peculiar process in our election that they can still substitute by start of November. And this is precisely what President Duterte did in 2015. So people who have had to hear the news that she had filed her candidacy for mayor are not buying it currently.
Leanne, I have been
including me.
Anything can happen. Anything can happen. We're all sitting on the edge of our seats here. Leanne, I've been following the live updates, the filing of certificates of candidacy for 2022 Philippines elections, October the 1st to 8th, 2021. It sounds boring, but it's anything but. Because in that last little bit of a timeline, we had the Vice President Leni Robredo, who declared seemingly at the very last minute. Let's have a listen to how she made that announcement.
Lalaban ako.
We need to liberate ourselves from the current situation. I will fight. We will fight. I am offering myself as candidate for president during the elections in 2022.
Sa halalan ng 2022, nasa kanila ang pera.
They have the money, machinery, an entire structure that can spread any story they want to project. But no amount of noise can bury the truth.
Hindi kayang tabunan ng kahit.
So the Vice President is a different party from the President, and the Vice President's candidacy as President is going the opposite direction from the way that President Duterte went. Jose, can you explain to us this schism in Philippines politics?
Well, I mean, we have a multi-party system in the Philippines, but in theory, that's only in theory, because in practice, what happens is that whoever wins the presidency creates a political party, and then there is the opposition. So it really becomes a two-party system in practice. So right now, the vice president is considered the opposition, but there are also other people within the different parties who can claim to be somewhat opposition, or or somewhere in between. So and perhaps that's the attraction also of Filipinos to all of these candidates, because sometimes you don't want either of extremes. You don't want one group or the other. That's why a neutral party like the mayor of Manila may be more attractive to most people. And as I was looking at the numbers based from the last survey conducted by one of the well-known pollsters, it seems like the mayor of Manila may actually have a shot. There are actually 3 of them who will probably be, well, I'm not saying that the vice president will not win, but it seems from the data that I'm reading that the main fight will be between Manny Pacquiao, Bongbong Marcos, the son of the former dictator, the late dictator, and the mayor of Manila, Isko Moreno.
Let's have a look to see what's happening on YouTube, because we've got some really interesting punditry happening here. Andrew Ryan wants to know, will there be debates between the candidates? Leanne?
Yes, certainly there will be debates between the candidates. We just don't know how they're going to be conducted considering the pandemic, but we do hope that we will have as a hot debate as possible as we had in the last national elections.
Ryan is saying, I support Leni Robredo. She has proven her mettle in the pandemic response. Lissandro, reaction?
Yeah, I don't think we should count out the vice president, because remember, this time before the 2016 election, Duterte was not a contender. So the Philippine elections are always full of surprises. And Vice President Robredo just launched her campaign last night or yesterday morning. And things can change overnight in the Philippines, especially since she's trying to rebrand herself in a way that makes her look like a middle candidate. Like, she's not beholden to this administration, but she's also not beholden to the Liberal Party, which was governing the Philippines, 6 years ago prior to Duterte.
Yes, let's talk.
What's nice about this is that when she came out yesterday, she rebranded herself a different color, because traditionally the opposition now has been always considered yellow and tie a yellow ribbon. That's the reference. It's about the Aquinos. But unfortunately, that has also had a backlash on her, and that's why she started to rebrand or recolor herself as pink. And it's quite interesting because, even on my Facebook wall, I could see so many people changing colors and showing that they're pink. But of course, whether that's going to translate into votes is another thing.
Let's talk about some... Leanne, you go first, and then I'm going to move us along to issues. Go ahead.
Right. Just to add on Vice President Robredo, the reason why she declared so late was she was trying so hard to unify the opposition. She didn't want a five-way fight. For her, the goal is clear: to not have a President Duterte or to not have a President Marcos. That's why I think beyond the filing of candidacy, there will still be talks with Senator Pacquiao or Mayor Isko to possibly convince them to be her VP or whatever combination that would give the opposition a much higher chance of winning to defeat a Duterte or a Marcos for the elections.
I want to bring in a new voice into our conversation, Edson C. Guido. We asked Edson a little bit earlier on what are the big issues people will be voting on, and this is what he told us.
The COVID pandemic should definitely be the main point of discussion in the Philippines during the election season. The community quarantine has been in place since March last year, and yet the number of cases remains to be high, and the repercussions have been economically and socially damaging. In 2020, the Philippines not only had the worst economic contraction in its post-war history, but also the worst among major Southeast Asian economies. So what should we do? Well, we should go back to the basics of testing, tracing, and isolation. We also need to ramp up our vaccine rollout, which has actually slowed down in recent weeks.
So I just want to show you, audience watching, this image here. It's from Bloomberg. It's the shift in the COVID resilience ranking. Ireland is at the top, and let me show you the country at the bottom, the Philippines.
Philippines, of course.
Jose.
Of course. Yeah, well, everybody, all analysts, academics would always say that this pandemic is an issue and should be an issue, but whether or not that is in the psyche of Filipinos, I don't think so. Unfortunately, I've been reading Filipinos too much, and even now, when push comes to shove, we tend to be very hopeful, and most of us tend to think, this pandemic, it's not a problem, until, of course, something happens within our families, among our friends. But generally, we tend to downplay the pandemic, and I think it still is presyo, trabaho, kita, prices, income, and jobs that will matter most to Filipinos.
Yeah. Although those things are related to the pandemic, because the reason why there are no jobs and the reason why people are not making money is because of these periodic shutdowns. And one of the reasons why we're also having an economic crisis that people feel is because the government has underspent. So we are under a real brutal regime of austerity in the Philippines. I mean, comparatively, people are not worrying about inflation elsewhere. People are not worrying about debt. They just want to spend, right? This is the new kind of macroeconomic paradigm initiated by the pandemic. But the Philippines is stuck, in the 1990s. It's so austere. It doesn't want to compromise its credit rating. It wants to save it for a rainy day. But if this isn't a rainy day, I don't know what is.
Leanne, I want you to have a listen. Have a listen, Leanne, to Ronald Holmes, he's the president of Pulse Asia Research, Inc. He sort of balances up the hopes of the electorate and the fears of the electorate. Leanne, will you have a listen to Ronald and then immediately respond off the back of this video? Here he is.
For people, controlling the increasing prices of basic commodities, increasing the pay of workers, the creation of more jobs, and the reduction of poverty are the most important or urgent concerns. Beyond this, we've heard political groups raising issues with regard to the administration's record in protecting the country's territorial integrity, in fighting graft and corruption, and even in fulfilling its campaign promise of eradicating illegal drugs in the country. More than these issues, what is at stake in the 2022 elections is whether the country will further slide into electoral autocracy.
Well, he did mention corruption, and I was going to say that part of the gut issue of jobs, prices, and income would be corruption, because right now our Senate is investigating major corruption issues in the procurement of our pandemic supplies involving Chinese suppliers and President Duterte's former economic advisor. So if we're talking about gut election issues, yes, jobs and prices will be topmost, but I think Filipinos will also be caring about corruption issues as well.
Lisandro, if you could sum up your mood right now, just looking at the candidates that we know are running, who knows what's going to happen between now and Saturday, the weekend for the Philippines, so that's exciting. How would you sum up your mood, watching from afar?
I am extremely nervous because the stakes are high, and the results of this election could be disastrous because it could spell a big dent on Philippine liberal democracy, which is not something we need at this point.
Jose, mood?
Yeah, I fully agree that, in fact, most of us would think that the stakes are just too high. Unfortunately, again, sometimes because we are as Ronnie Holmes has suggested, Filipinos tend to be very optimistic about things. And that's probably both a strength and a weakness. On one hand, that helps us cope. But on the other hand, that also makes us tend to think of, entertainment as our way of coping, and perhaps elections are also part of our entertainment.
And Leanne, finally.
Yeah, same. I agree. I am really extremely nervous for the upcoming elections. And speaking as a journalist, whoever wins will have a significant effect on how our press freedom will be. Will ABS-CBN, the largest network, be reopened? Will my company be shut down for good? We don't know. So yeah, it makes me extremely nervous.
One more thing I need to do, I'm going to show you, guess this, on my laptop. The stream did a little survey of its own, an unofficial poll. Who do you think will succeed Rodrigo Duterte as Philippines president in 2022? At the bottom, Isko Moreno, the mayor of Manila. Next, we have at 12.3% Leni Robredo, the current VP. Sara Duterte hasn't even declared she's running yet, daughter of the President Duterte. And then 56%. It's a knockout for Manny Pacquiao. Lisandro, you're also laughing. Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised. I think an international viewership would just assume that Pacquiao is so popular
So powerful.
Would
of course he's going to beat everybody else.
into Philippine politics. But the reality is we are at a moment of authoritarian nostalgia, and that could be more powerful than Pacquiao, which is scary.
Thank you, guests. I really appreciate your analysis. That was Lisandro. Also, thank you to Jose and also to Leanne as well, and to you for your questions. I appreciate you very much. I'll see you next time on the stream. Take care, everybody.